So Anne, we're here in the SF's Lisburn offices, and could you begin just by sharing with us a little bit about who you are and your family background?
Yeah. So I'm Anne Carson, and my father was a member of the Ulster Defence Regiment. He was a full-time postman, part-time member of the UDR, and he was murdered at the family home in 1977.
And growing up with your siblings, and how many siblings did you have?
So there was five of us. So I had three sisters. I have three sisters and one brother.
And can you speak to some of the times that you had and
Yeah.
family life, what it was like?
Yeah, so it's a working class family, very little money, very few luxuries growing up, especially because there was five of us, we were all really close in age. We had a Cocker Spaniel dog called Dash that was a big part of our family that my daddy had bought for us, and we had cats. We had a cat called Smokey, the main cat. We have several cats. So we grew up off the Shankill Road and a 2 up, 2 down, outside toilet, no bathroom, until I was, I'm going to say, 13. So then there was the redevelopment of Belfast, and mum and daddy had to start looking for somewhere else to live. And I can remember going to see houses, and I remember some of them were like really in areas in Ardoyne that really, Alliance Avenue, which basically was quite dangerous, because it was verged, it was like a peace line. And it was very difficult to get a house because of 4 girls, 1 boy, the bedrooms. And then we got this house on Woodville Avenue, which also was at a peace line. So basically you walk down our street, you're on the Springfield Road, across the road, you were into nationalist areas. But in that block of houses, there was, I'm going to say, 3 other UDR families. So whether my daddy thought this is as safe as it's going to be, and also he was a postman, and I would say he obviously knew that he was a target at work, as well as at home, and so we ended up living there, and we had like 3.5 bedrooms, I'm going to say, and an indoor bathroom, so it was a big change from what we had grown up with.
And your memories of growing up, I mean, despite not having so much, was there happy times shared in that community?
Yeah, so definitely. All I can remember is we all played out in the street. Everybody played out in the street, and then as I got older, then I had different friends, and we'd maybe go and stand maybe at the corner, and which he wasn't happy about at all, but it was just somewhere to meet. And the youth club, started to go to youth club, we disco. My 2 sisters, 3 sisters, they would play together. 2 of them are really close in age and one not so, but really the 2 or 3 of them would play together, and they would be playing outside, and just Kirby and things like that. Yeah.
And Anne, your daddy in joining the UDR, had your family a history with a service, or was it something distinct and different?
Yeah. I never found out why he joined.
Mm-hmm.
I know he did at one point try to have a conversation, or start a conversation with me about what was my feelings about it, and I remember saying no, I wouldn't join, and he went, why not? But I don't remember the conversation carrying on after that. But so I would have loved to have had a conversation with him. I honestly think that he joined the UDR against terrorism, and because he was very black and white sort of person. It was right, it was legal, it was wrong, so that's my feelings, but I don't know for sure. He was in the Ulster Rifles as a young man, and he did serve there up until I think 1961, and then when he started to have a family, he left. So obviously he had that background, that military background, so obviously that was part of it.
Do you think he liked the discipline and the comradeship maybe?
I think really, again, I'm not sure, but I think he really enjoyed, like a lot of, if I've spoken to, people who've served, and they've all said that it was comradeship, and they were all together, and I think that was a big part of it too. It's military service, and then obviously what the UDR gave him back and what he could give back. But I really do think that he joined to fight terrorism.
Yeah. he felt he was doing something, but in, as you say, in a lawful and moral way.
Yes.
And he would have been obviously growing up there, in that part of Belfast, exposed to other risk factors. He could have been pulled into other organisations, but that wasn't the type of man that he was.
Oh no, definitely. Oh no, definitely not. Oh, 100% not. He grew up off the Crumlin Road, the old Lodge Road, and he had Catholic neighbours. So he grew up, although he was in North Belfast, he grew up with Catholic friends, and he never deviated from that.
Yeah.
We're all together. We're all the same people. We just go to different churches. So going into an organisation, he would not. No, wouldn't have even contemplated it. I know that for a fact. So I suppose that being in the UDR was probably the only way that he could then maybe fight against terrorism.
Yeah.
So.
And on within your family then, obviously there's those old stories that come from the Troubles that you could never say what your dad really did. People would have known him to be a postman, but his other role. Did you feel life was curtailed in any way, or your holidays, where you could go and the places you could visit, was that all kind of curtailed in any shape or form?
I think where you could go was curtailed by the situation in Belfast and where we lived, and then there was almost like across the road, and you were in a nationals there, and you wouldn't have gone there. The main thing about my daddy being in UDR, I would say, would be being really conscious of who was coming to the door. You were told not to answer the door. Somebody rapped the door, see who it was first. And I remember he had his personal weapon, and he, I can remember him having it, and he'd maybe doze on the sofa and it'd be under the cushion. But that was part of our life. We didn't really even question that in any way. That's just that we knew he needed it, but we didn't go beyond that.
Yeah.
So.
And Anne, look, I don't want to cause you difficulty here, but thinking to the day and concerned when your life forever changed, I know that you were present. Do you want to share any reflection of what you recall from that day?
Well, he was murdered in our family home, and the two gunmen shot through the window of the front door. It was like frosted glass, so they shot at a shadow, and I really believe that it could have been anybody in that house today, or that day. So what we think about that day is that my daddy's seen them coming up the path. He could have went out the back, because our living room was like front and back windows. He could have got out the back, but it was like 8:15 in the morning, and we were coming down the stairs, and he actually had the teapot on for make tea for my mama. So he was expecting us to come down the stairs, and I think in his head, if he had went out the back, he was leaving us, to one of us could potentially be the one who would come down to the door. So I believe that's why he made his way to the door, and he didn't get a chance to open it. So obviously we don't know what happened in those moments. We've been told that he had his weapon out, but I don't know for sure if that is the case. So obviously it was a very violent act, and it was very violent scenes, and he didn't die right away. So he was choking for breath in the hall, and that is something that I have flashbacks about, I'm going to say, every day. So he passed away in the hall, and then obviously it was like just loads of people came, and the police were there, and the policeman it was me and my brother, my mummy there, and the policeman was trying to tell us what had happened, that Daddy died. And we had like a wee picture on the wall with like a religious verse on it. He was wounded for our transgressions, I think it said. And the policeman kept looking at it, but he couldn't say it. And Mommy kept going, I don't care how badly injured he is, I'll look after him and all this. And then I just got the point. I just said to the policeman, has he died? And he went, yes. And he actually said afterwards that, I I don't know what he said afterwards, but he was basically said that the fact that I had the strength to say that helped him, impart the news of what had happened. Yeah, so, and my 3 sisters, they were away at the time, so they came back home that afternoon. And my sister Sandra, that her memory is that she came in and Mummy was sitting dressed in black, crying, and she just looked and thought, who's that old woman there? That's as if she just changed completely from that moment.
And I'm just thinking to that situation that maybe it's particularly difficult because they came to your family home, and it's the sense of invasion of a place that you felt was safe.
Oh, definitely. Even today, I freeze if somebody knocks the door. It's just like it's the one place that you should have been safe in, and that was violated. And yes, that sort of stays with you for your whole life, and that's what really, it hurts that it happened there. I mean, it been terrible to happen anywhere, but I think my daddy would have been very hurt that it happened in front of his family, And they had watched us, obviously. It was the school holidays. They knew that there was children in the house, and that's how disdainful they were of a family.
It was the terrorisation of the wider family.
Yes, absolutely, terrorisation of the family. And even now, when you hear like their spokespeople, Sinn Féin, talk about working class families, and I keep thinking, well, it was working class families, and look what you did to them. You just, in a way, you destroyed them.
Because Anne, forgive me for saying this, but it's always struck me that your daddy's occupation of being a postman, they could have murdered him any place. Yeah. They would have known where he was going to be, but it was almost like they methodically decided to send that message, wasn't it?
Yeah,
we believe
that he was obviously set up, possibly by neighbours, because it was a mixed area. That part of our street was mixed. But he wasn't due to work that week. He was meant to be on holiday, and he was asked if he would come in because someone, had taken sick or wasn't coming in. And we've always had a bit of suspicion over that, but we've never, got anywhere with that. But he wasn't meant to be working that week at all then. And I think he knew himself that he would be a target because he was like a postman driver, so he'd been driving around and maybe delivering parcels, maybe not fairly isolated, homes. So yes, it could have happened anywhere, and no, they just hit where it hurt the most people. And I keep thinking about when he was going to work, because he would have started work about 5 in the morning, and quite often, like in the winter, they would have been like pitch black. And I just think the bravery of somebody, all those men and women, to open their door at 5 in the morning when nobody about, and to step out wondering, is there somebody and wait for me, so.
Because that old line about varying routes and what have you, but the difficulty is you still have to enter your own home and exit your own home.
Yes,
So
and to do that, yes, especially, maybe in the very early hours of the morning when you'd be very vulnerable, but it didn't happen like that, and I think that's really what we thought. It'll be at night time, or it'll be, or very early in the morning, but when he's coming off shift from the UDR.
And I suppose, look, today in 2026, if anything of this nature were to happen, I think the broader community would expect all sorts of resources to kick in to support a family in the immediate aftermath of all of that. Whether it's the emotional care, financial, because there's huge pressures whenever main breadwinner's taken away. What was the family's experience of that time? And
the post office had a welfare officer, so he was very much present the first, I'm going to say, couple of months anyway, few months, and he was very, very helpful. And then the army had their welfare officer as well, so they were both there in the initial days. And I would say my mummy had no real financial knowledge of
Yes.
the family income and all that. And so I was very much there with her, while they were going through things with her. There was the pensions that were available, etc., and different things they got there. So there was help initially, but then it fell away. Obviously, it's going to fall away. There was no counselling offered. And I think any counselling would have been just offered to my mummy anyway. We were just discounted as needing further help, I think. So apart from immediate family, there was nothing. And every single one of us have been traumatised by what happened. And we ended up, I think we all were trying to deal with it in our own way.
Yeah.
So we didn't deal with it together, and which, looking back, was totally the wrong way of doing things. But we all just withdrew into ourselves and dealt with it in different ways, so.
And Anne, you're the eldest, so you had to grow up very, very quickly,
Yeah.
almost becoming a second mum within the family.
Yeah. So I was due to go back to school, and I remember going up for my results and just looking at, all the other girls and thinking, that's not even done. It just seemed so childish to go back to school after what had happened. And then obviously there's financial implications as well. So so I left school and started work. I did have dreams of going to university, but they were just gone. So it impacted in my future a lot.
And when you look on that there period of time, there's a line that tourism, when a bullet is fired, it doesn't stop travelling. It continues to travel. It wrecks lives. So did you find as well within the family scenario that relationships could be strained at times because of the issues that were involved?
Yeah. Yes, I think my mummy just went to pieces when it happened, and she just was never the same person again. And I sort of feel that I lost both my parents that day, because the family, as I knew it, just changed completely, and it actually wasn't there anymore. And as I said, we were all individually trying to cope, with what had happened. Obviously, my three sisters weren't there, and they were only slightly younger, but young enough to be a big difference between us. And I think everybody just sort of went into themselves and dealt with it, in their own way. And you weren't offered anything. The biggest support to me was my grandmother, but my mother's mother actually was the biggest support to me. But Granny McTaggart, she passed away like 3 years later, but she was totally devastated by it. And my father's mother was housebound, and he was the only son who stayed in Northern Ireland. There was 3 of them in England, and 4 of them in England actually, and 1 of them in Australia. So he was the only one who'd been at home, and he used to visit her a lot. And I can't imagine how that was for her, losing him. And obviously his sister, he had my daddy's sisters were all devastated, and my Aunt Ruby and my mummy's sister, just everybody I think it was total shock, that everybody had, as much as, so there's grief, but there's the shock, and you just never.
And there's no death quite like it caused by another human being.
No, and you don't. It doesn't change, it's not just the grief of someone dying, it's the way they died, and then why they died, and the people, who did it, and then obviously no justice. That's and today that's the biggest burden we have to carry.
Sure.
There's no justice.
And we've had a conversation on this issue before, and I just wanted to touch on this. When your mummy then did thankfully find some new happiness, and she married for a second time, the system, rather than being there for her, removed her war widow's pension at that time. And I've always thought that sometimes this is always looked through the lens of finance, and whilst that's part of it, probably for you it was a sense almost that the state were extinguishing your daddy's contribution. Was that how you would have felt at that time?
I think at that time we just accepted we were all grown up by that stage. I think we just accepted that was how things were. But my mommy and Sandra and Muriel, two of my sisters, used to get a Christmas card from the UDR. And that next Christmas, the Christmas card came. And that was it. And I think for my two sisters, that was a big blow to them, because they felt as if they had a connection there, and then it was just like that, there it was gone, So that was hard to take. I sort of feel that the MOD should have basically been looking after us as a family, but other than that financial pension, they didn't. And quite often I think they're quite cold and callous. They should have been basically wrapping their arms around us and looking after us, and we all don't feel that they did.
Because in the context of things, and one murder, as we know, is too many, but this wasn't tens of thousands of people. This was a small cohort of people who were impacted, and you would have expected, as you say, the state to wrap itself around families at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that didn't happen. And then obviously with the War Widows recognition payment, that was another challenge, kind of, as you know. But
it was a fight that shouldn't really have had to be fought. Can I ask as well, Anne? I mean, we're sitting now in 2026, and next year marks a very significant milestone as well, because it's the 50th anniversary next year. And just some of the thoughts maybe that you're having as a family now, because victims' family, the bereaved won't forget someone was a 51st or 52nd or 53rd anniversary, but often the community seems to focus upon a 50th, and then almost that horrible phraseology, a line for them is drawn. And is that in your mind as we approach the 50th anniversary, and how you feel you would want your daddy's legacy to be marked, that there is a permanence around all of that going forward?
I sort of feel that I look at 50 years coming up, and I can't believe it, And even the impact of his death, 49 years later, it's immense.
Yes.
And it doesn't diminish in any way. So I think more along that lines. Also with everything that he's missed, and that we've missed, wedding days, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and I sort of miss not being able to talk to him as an adult too. I miss that a lot. Well, I didn't have it, if you know what I mean, but I miss that I didn't have the opportunity for that. So the 50 years to me is more like thinking how we survived.
Yes. Yeah.
As what you're saying about society and all, I've long accepted that you get like indifferent shrugs or put it, that's in the past, move on. These things have happened. Everybody's suffered, all that, but that's day in, day out. So the fact that it's 50 years doesn't change that.
Yeah.
And
like I say, I mean, Anna, what you've said there is that you were starved of those opportunities to have maybe a sounding board, somebody to provide advice in situations, somebody, because the relationship between a father and a daughter is like no other, isn't it? And they always say that if a man ever comes second place to the father, then he's doing well, who a woman will choose, because there's nobody quite like the father figure within the family, isn't it?
I think so, definitely. And I think because I was the oldest as well, but I sort of feel that if he was here now, he would be the one I would be going, I don't think all of us would be going to for advice and support. and it's, we can't have that.
And on just as a final question, this project obviously that you're participating in is known as the Quiet Courage, and it's essentially trying to pull together a range of, not stories because that's fiction, but real lived experiences that people have had where they've managed to carry through despite terrible circumstances. And that was your life. Quiet courage, no real noise. You weren't to the fore in anything, but did that, and that's why there is actually a family at the end of it all, however challenging it was.
Yeah.
Had that not been there, where would we be?
Yeah, I think my daddy instilled a lot of values in us, and I think we have all, carried them forward, and sort of lived our lives according to those, even though we haven't really sort of consciously thought of it, but I think deep down that is what we have done. I think when I look back, we always expected justice, and you'd be told, there'd be no stone unturned, and then eventually, when we tried to find out, and didn't really get anywhere, and then the HET came, which I could have written that HET report myself, basically, and then you began to realise, listen, nobody even attempted to turn up any stone at all, and that is one of the most hurtful things, to know that those deaths are treated as
almost
as if as if they weren't. They're not important.
Expendable.
They're not important enough. And for a man who stood up for justice, and then this is what's happened, and what's happened to his family. You sort of. I just think, what was it all for? What was it for?
You think on the life choices and life values that he lived by, he expected that those would be shown to him by others who have a role to dispense justice. Yes,
definitely, and we in turn expected that too, and then your eyes are opened. So you can't have nobody can live without having some element of justice, without it really affecting them really, really deeply. And that's has affected us really deeply, that there hasn't been anybody brought to justice. Obviously, being a member of SEF has been really important to our family, and it has given us so much comfort, Kenny, and just to know that somebody's standing there with you, and even when you are trying to get some form of justice, or if you're trying, for example, the War Widows pension, I really believe that wouldn't have come about if it hadn't been for SEF. I honestly really believe that you kept it front and centre with MPs and anybody you could, and the MOD and anybody you could lobby. And being SEF has also given me a connection with people who are the same as me, and especially there's a group of women, I can see their faces now in front of me, and it's that I've got to know through SEF, and those women it's a privilege for me to know them, and I just think it's really important to me that they are in my life, even on the outskirts, but that they're there. And there's two in particular of exactly the same circumstances as myself and my family, and I hadn't met anybody who suffered like us until I met them.
Your family give back what you receive, because victims and survivors take strength from one another, and you've attended a range of events right outside of where you're living yourself, and that's always marked. And you're right, it's about a wider family of people who share hopefully the same set of values.
Same set of values, and people who have gone through the same experience and who know how you feel and don't shrug it off.
Yeah. And all I would say to you as well is, don't underestimate, go back to the quiet courage phraseology, because none of those things would have happened in terms of the war situation, but for the fact that there were people that are prepared to stand and to say this is wrong. We might have been the channel by which that was campaigned, but it was yourselves as families were there, and that's why it happened. So don't ever underestimate that. And I always say it wasn't officialdom or the official War Widows Association who initially brought this to bear. It was a lonely widow in Otley in Yorkshire, and then others then came around all of that. So that voice in the wilderness, but it became a louder voice, and I think we just have to continue to do that, don't we?
Yeah.